fear and going after something that's kind of bigger than what you are used to, or maybe you don't know if you can do it, that fear is a good thing. It means that you're going after something kind of bigger than you. And it means you're going to push your boundaries. It means you're going to be able to test yourself. And, I don't think that you can find growth as much anywhere else if you're not pushing yourself and doing something that scares you a little bit, whether that's, out on the trails and you're going after an FKT, or if you're, challenging yourself with a rock climb, or if you're, pushing yourself in your job and your work or family or something like that. It's, going after something that makes you uncomfortable is I think really important.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and we love shining a light on people who are doing what they love in this life. People who remind us that taking risks is a part of the deal, but perhaps our appropriate pace and relative safety are within our ability to assess risk. I think our guest today would agree, as she considers risk assessment as one of her greatest strengths. Ashley Winchester is an adventure journalist, outdoor guide, endurance athlete, host of the Women in the Wild podcast, and someone who is well on her way to being the first female to claim 100 fastest known time routes. Ashley is the queen of FKTs. She is putting herself out there and putting in the work. She has succeeded in claiming over 50 FKT routes to date. And with her partner, Jason Hardrath, by her side, there seems to be no end to the heights Ashley will reach. And I know she knows that she's not going to reach those heights without challenge, because discomfort is where we grow. We're so looking forward to this conversation. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. And as of course you know, because you've been the other part of getting this podcast put together, it's been a while. I think we were first in touch about a year ago. And I want to thank our one of our athletes on the team, Jody, who is big fan of yours and somebody who's out there doing amazing things on the trails as a woman in the wild. I want to thank her because she's the one that brought you and Jason into our awareness. So we'll be coming after him probably next.
Mm-hmm. Oh, excellent. Good. Yeah. He actually told me that's a podcast I haven't been on yet. He was, I was like, well, I got there first.
I like it. Good. Yeah. You take the lead here. It's perfect. Okay. So for people who don't know what an FKT is, can you what is that? How would you describe it to someone?
Yeah, so fastest known time, or FKT as we like to call them, is basically a speed record on an established route. And that route could be across a desert, through canyons, over mountains. Sometimes it's one mountain, sometimes it's a link up of mountains, sometimes it's around the mountain. Sometimes it's on trails, and sometimes there's off-trail navigation. But basically, it's a speed record on an established route.
And I've heard you say off trail. So is off trail this sounds like a pretty stellar question. Is that off trail? You're kind of bushwhacking your way on the route?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So off trail is truly off trail. It's, no trail to follow. Off trail sections in FKTs, there's usually a general direction or a place that you need to get to, and you kind of have to figure out how to get there on your own. So, for example, there's actually an FKT that goes from the northernmost point of Death Valley to the southernmost point of Death Valley, and it is 100% off trail. It does not follow trail or roads or anything the entire way. So you have to plan your route ahead of time, have really good maps, good route finding skills, and, be able to navigate.
And I think you have some unfinished business for an FKT attempt on that route. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. That one, I've actually attempted it twice, and I have not succeeded both times, and for a variety of reasons. Partly because maybe the first time I didn't plan super well. I actually, on the first go at it, because of the nature of Death Valley, and the nature of this route, it's typically done in a completely unsupported style. And unsupported with FKTs means that you are not taking help from anybody. You're not caching any supplies ahead of time. You're not, you don't leave anything for yourself along the way before you start the route. So you carry everything that you need from the start for the entire thing. And you don't leave anything behind either. So you have to, pack out what you pack in, and follow all the wilderness regulations and everything like that. So, this route through Death Valley is typically done in an unsupported fashion. So no help. And it being Death Valley, there's really no drinkable water along the route. And so you have to carry all of your water from the start that you need for the entire thing. And it's about 165 miles long. So it's a lot of water. The first time I tried it, I think I started with 15 and a half liters of water. And right around the 100-mile mark, I was down to 4 liters already. And I was out there for 2.5 days. So you kind of fly through the water. So I knew I wouldn't be able to finish out 65 miles on 4 liters of water. So I decided to exit at the easiest point, where I was at that point. So, it was the first go. The second time I tried it, I actually took 20 liters of water, kind of expecting, it's Death Valley. It's going to be warm. Typically, this route is done in the wintertime so that you're not actually battling, 120 degree weather. Mm-hmm. But it still gets pretty warm during the day if the sun's out. So I was expecting it to be warm. I took 20 liters of water with me. And I ended up in a huge rainstorm and I got rained out. And because I got caught in a rainstorm, a lot of my stuff got soaked, and it was dropping down into the 30s in the evenings at night. And so I knew that it was kind of bad going forward at that point. So I decided to pull the plug on that one for personal safety reasons. And I actually was about to go back just this last February, so last month. And I ended up, as I was guiding on a big mountain in Argentina, on Aconcagua, I actually got COVID up at Camp 2, so above 18,000 feet, and ended up having to recover from that for most of February. I actually missed the window for it this year. And hopefully I'll get to go back next winter to try it again.
Is there somebody who has the fastest, is this an established route? Somebody already has the fastest time. So you're shooting to beat that time.
Yeah. So it's an established route. Actually, no woman has completed the crossing unsupported yet. There have been multiple tries, and not just my two, but other women have tried it. It's really, really challenging. You think about Death Valley and you're like, well, it's just all flat and salt pan, right? But it's not. It's very hard to navigate. You're walking through really rocky washes and, through a lot of sand. You go through sand dunes, you go through mud pits. It's really, really challenging. And so on a map, it's kind of misleading because it looks flat. And you're like, oh, I can do that. I can walk through a dry riverbed all day. But it is very difficult. I would love to be the first woman to complete the unsupported crossing. There actually was a recent, a guy, Cameron, he just did it last February around the same time that I was going to do it. And he got a new fastest known time on it, which, it's kind of actually a blazing speed for that route. It's he did it in just under 5 days, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So FKTs can be anything. What's the shortest one? So if that's I would assume is a longer one, 5, or maybe it's not even a long one. What's a short one?
FKTs can be any length, really. There are FKTs out there that are 1 or 2 miles long. The kind of rules surrounding FKTs, the ethics surrounding FKTs is that it needs to be a classic and repeatable route. So something that somebody from, on the other side of the United States would want to come and repeat because it's cool. And so I know specifically in Connecticut, there's a bunch of really, really short FKTs on these like historic trails that are over there. So, 1, 2, 3, 8 miles long. But they can range anywhere from, a couple of miles to, the whole Pacific Crest Trail. And then some, there's a FKT on the Triple Crown. So, you can FKT the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail as one FKT.
No, those are clearly like cool routes, but who's determining that it's cool enough to be an established route? Like, is there a governing body? Yeah.
So, FKT, it's a community of people. It's not really governed by any one person specifically. FKTs, the initial kind of governing body, was developed by Buzz Burrell and Peter Backwin. And they kind of started this whole idea of FKTing by just running classic routes really fast. And so they did the John Muir Trail. And they started this like online forum. And FKTs have grown so much now that there's actually there are people in different areas of the US and around the world now that actually sort of check routes, make sure that they kind of qualify for what an FKT should be. And then they also verify FKT submissions. And so these people, like if somebody submits a new route, which you can do if you have a route in your neck of the woods or one that you know of that you want to run as an FKT, you can submit that route as an FKT and it gets approved pretty much by, these regional managers kind of. And once it's approved, then people can run the FKT. You have to actually record it on some kind of GPS. You have to take pictures. You write a report afterwards and you submit all of this evidence that you did the FKT and it gets approved and posted. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, so you better love the process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a process. It's a process. And, you don't have to create your own FKTs. There are people out there who are, they use that as their creative outlet. And that's super cool. I've created a few FKTs myself. I have plans to create some more. It's a fun thing to do, but you don't have to do that. Like you can go find an FKT on the FKT website that you're like, okay, this one gets me excited and I'm going to go run this and see if I can beat the time or establish, the first time or whatever. And, you just have to make sure you record and submit evidence that you did it.
So on a lower scale than that, we would be looking at like Strava segments. I don't know if you're familiar with Strava, but yeah, you can create segments which are super short. And I discovered this during COVID when everything was shut down. I'm like, okay, we're not racing. This is something cool to go check out. And then I did exactly that. I created a segment, but it's not a classic because nobody has done it except Jess and me. And so we're like the king and queen of this 3 mile, like up and down. But I totally get it. Like I just started looking for things that were already established, things that I kind of thought possible was in my reach. Maybe after a few tries I could get there, but it became that allure to me with no racing. It actually like pulled me in a little bit.
Yeah, FKTs really blew up in 2020 when all of the races were canceled. Everybody needed a reason to use their fitness and wanted something to, give themselves a goal to aim for. And so FKTs really grew substantially in 2020.
So tell us how you got into this. Like, how do you get to be, the female leader of FKTs across the globe? Were you a runner your whole life? Like, do you have to be super fast? Like, how did you get into this? And tell us that story.
Well, this is actually kind of the fun part. And what gets me really excited about FKTs is I've never been a super fast runner. I've always been, in races, kind of a middle of the pack sort of person. Like I was never outstanding. I did better in longer distances. So ultra races. I've placed second in one ultra distance race that I did. And, so I never considered myself an outstanding runner, and I didn't actually start running until a little bit later in life. I was, in my mid 20s when I started running, later 20s when I started running. So I've only been running for, I guess now like 12 or 13 years, but not to date myself, but yeah, so I haven't been running my whole life. I never did track and field in high school. I didn't run cross country. I started running simply for fitness reasons, in my mid 20s, and just really enjoyed it. And especially once I found the trails, that's where I really found a lot of joy in running. And as far as FKTs went, that's something, they were always kind of on my radar. As the more I got into running, it's like you hear about these FKTs on the rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon and these blazing fast speeds on the John Muir Trail. And, I was always attracted to the idea because I just really love being in the wilderness on my own. I've never been a huge fan of races, and the fanfare and the competition. And I just really love the peace of being in the wilderness, on my own. And so FKTs definitely drew my attention because of that. But because I've never been, a first place runner, I've always been kind of a middle of the pack runner. I just thought that they were out of my reach. And it wasn't until I met Jason, and Jason started doing these really big mountain link ups and things like, running around Crater Lake and tagging all the 7 highest peaks. And it was kind of like, wow, that's really cool stuff. I want to do that. But then he started submitting them as FKTs. And I kind of went, wait a second, I want to do this stuff. That sounds really cool. And I ended up going after an FKT, just an obscure FKT in the Bay Area in California, and got the FKT and kind of went, all right, game on. This is cool. I like this. And so I do credit Jason for kind of convincing me to start doing them. And he definitely, out of the two of us, he discovered it first. But I definitely, hooked right into it.
So you mentioned, you love to be on the trail by yourself, but we live in this society that has, conditioned us women that we should feel fear, that we are not safe when we're on the trail. And did you come up against that kind of conditioning or programming in your own mind, or just being out there and being in that freedom and realizing that you were actually safe, that fell away?
Yeah, I've never felt that fearful in the outdoors. I was taught as a kid, as a woman, as a girl growing up, that the things to fear are people, pretty much. And so, as women, we're taught at a young age to, carry your keys in between your fingers when you're walking alone to your car at night. And, there's all these things. Always keep your front door locked. You're always super aware of your surroundings. You never park, you always park underneath the light at the grocery store when you go at night. There's all these things that we're conditioned to, to be very aware and be fearful. But I am really lucky in that I grew up in a way that I was outdoors all the time when I was a kid. My parents, my mom, she kicked us out as kids outside, and we would go and run off into the wilderness on our own. I think because of the way I was brought up, and because I learned that people are the ones to fear, I actually feel so much safer out on the trails in the wilderness than I do walking down the streets alone most of the time. I've had more weird interactions with humans in a city than I have out on the trail. And so I actually feel pretty safe out there. I mean, I know there's animals, there's bears and mountain lions, but I honestly, all of the hundreds of hours and days and weeks that I've spent on the trails, I've never had a bad experience with wildlife. I mean, I've had run-ins with bears, seen plenty of mountain lion signs, but lots of run-ins with coyotes. I've never had any issues. And I've had issues with humans in the city. So Yeah. I feel safer out there personally.
What would you say to somebody who, a woman specifically, who's, and you know what, it might not even be a woman, it could be a man as well, who is really like, I want to get into this, but I do have that fear.
Yeah, I know. So that fear is pretty deeply ingrained in a lot of us. And I think the best way to do it is to start slow. Find a trail that's near a place that you feel safe. You don't have to go very far on it. Just get yourself out there, go to the trailhead, walk a quarter mile up the trail, evaluate how you feel. And then, if you feel a little uncomfortable, that's okay. You can push a little bit further. And one thing that I've found is with people, I mean, I want to say women, but with people, once they start kind of getting out there and feeling comfortable and getting to know their local trails, I think that's a huge part too, is just kind of like getting to know the local trail system so that you don't ever feel lost. And so that takes a little bit of exploration. Take a map with you, have a map loaded on your phone, take your GPS, anything like that makes you feel more comfortable, that you can get back to your vehicle safely. But I think it's just good to start slow and just kind of slowly expose yourself to the outdoors and being alone on the trail, or take a friend with you first. And kind of get more comfortable out there and with the terrain and everything. And then of course, take stuff with you that makes you feel like you could handle a situation if something were to come up. Take snacks, take extra layers, take liquids, take personal protection if you want to, pepper spray. I used to run with pepper spray all the time because there was that, fear that was there that I was going to run into a person. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I stopped carrying pepper spray because I lost it during an FKT, and I just ever since just never bought another one.
I love it. Mother Nature was like, I'll take that. You don't need that. Why are you carrying this? You don't need that. Just leave it behind. No, I think you can feel safe saying that. I used to do the same thing. I used to buy pepper spray, and then it was like, 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, how do I even know if, it's like in the junk drawer in the kitchen. I was like, oh, I guess I should grab it. And then I just was like, no, it's paying attention to your surroundings. I love how you said, evaluate how you feel. And I think that can really play into what I mentioned in the intro too, is like that risk assessment, right? And I think that your progress forward is honor where you are and allow your experience to be relative to that, but also don't let where you are hold you back and keep you away from something that's been tugging on you that you want to pursue and experience in this life.
Yeah. It's that discomfort and kind of embracing that discomfort. And if you're able to kind of evaluate where you're at and go, okay, am I being fearful because there's actually something to be scared of? Or am I being fearful because of, my mind is running away with some scenario that's probably not going to work out in reality? And being able to kind of dissect those things, and, figure out, is this discomfort something that I can manage? And if so, like, keep pushing forward and see where you go. That's when I first started running trails. I've always been a hiker. I've always loved being outdoors on the trails, but I started running trails, and that brought like a whole nother level of, exploration and route finding for me. And, when I first started running trails, it was a little bit scary because, if I didn't know the trails, I didn't know where, this intersection took me, or if I went this way, would I get lost and not be able to find my way back? And that's where having, the map on my phone or something like that, a GPS where I know exactly where I'm at, was super helpful. And for me, one of the things that really drew me further and further, was curiosity and exploration. I'm very, very driven by curiosity. And, I would start wondering what's around the next corner, what's over that next hill, what's down this trail. And I usually go that way, but what's down this way? And so kind of allowing that natural curiosity, that childlike curiosity to kind of come out, also helps to sort of drive you forward.
Well, that's that split moment what I feel connected to what you're saying is you can change that fear, because fear and excitement come from the same part in the body. So you can actually flip that fear around and turn it into something so exciting and engaging and unknown, even though that adds a little bit of fear, to be something that you may want to start seeking. Like you start seeking these avenues that you've never been to before. Do you feel like you're getting into that place where you're like, oh, I'm after, not after discomfort, but after something that is extremely challenging, that maybe in the back of your mind just a little bit, there's a little bit of fear that wants to hold you back?
Yeah. There's a quote, and I might destroy it by trying to repeat it right now, but it's something along the lines, if your goal doesn't scare you, then it's not big enough. And I love that, because it reminds me that fear and going after something that's kind of bigger than what you are used to, or maybe you don't know if you can do it, that fear is a good thing. It means that you're going after something kind of bigger than you. And it means you're going to push your boundaries. It means you're going to be able to test yourself. And, I don't think that you can find growth as much anywhere else if you're not pushing yourself and doing something that scares you a little bit, whether that's, out on the trails and you're going after an FKT, or if you're, challenging yourself with a rock climb, or if you're, pushing yourself in your job and your work or family or something like that. It's, going after something that makes you uncomfortable is I think really important.
Well, I'm glad you move to that, because it was something we come up against so often, and something we experience ourselves and you experience, but other people, it sort of like paralyzes them. Is you're in this job that is comfortable and it's known and it's okay, yet it's not making you happy, or you feel like there's something else out there. And so you were in vet medicine for 13 years, and I'm assuming you were comfortable there and you loved it. But something has to pull you away from that comfort zone to push you into the unknown. We did it ourselves. We quit our jobs and, packed up, sold our house and moved across the country. And yes, it's unfamiliar and scary, but now that we're on the other side of it, and I'm sure you are too, it's like, why didn't we start this sooner? So how did you butt up against that when you left your profession?
Yeah, that was a really scary change for me, because of the enormity of it. I mean, veterinary medicine isn't easy. And, my job, I was a veterinary assistant that kind of specialized in internal medicine. And so I was kind of a really important part of this team of people, a small team of people, within the hospital. And I was in it for so long that I was actually really comfortable there. I knew what I was doing. I also, was learning constantly. It definitely pushed me as far as, my ability to focus and stay on my feet and just, respond really quickly. And there were so many things that were really amazing about it, working with the animals, the people that I worked with. But I definitely got to a point where in that job, I wasn't feeling the joy anymore. In veterinary medicine, there's kind of this general idea that if you are there, that is what your world revolves around. Your life revolves around vet med and the animals. And my dog had passed away. I was definitely starting to pursue other, mountain objectives and rock climbing objectives. And my priorities started to shift away from my job. And so I made the decision to pursue something that was more in line with what I wanted out of my life, which was a little bit more freedom. I wanted to be in the outdoors more. I wanted to try and, centralize the outdoors in my life. And I knew that wasn't going to happen working at the vet. And so I made the decision to move away from there. And it was really terrifying, especially going from something that was so, I worked 40 to 60 hours a week. I was guaranteed a paycheck, to freelance writing, which is kind of volatile with how much you make every month and how much work is coming in and everything like that. So it was a really scary transition for me. And actually, in order to make that happen, had to give up a lot of other things in my life, like my own apartment. I ended up, well, now I actually van life. And so I don't pay rent at all, which helps me kind of pursue these other things on the side. But yeah, it was really, really scary. But I knew the thing that I ask myself a lot when making big decisions like that is like, will I regret not doing it? Will I regret not giving this a try? And that has been a huge driver for me in my decision making, because if I'm going to regret not trying it, then I have to try it. Like I have to. One of the things that people say on their, as they age and are on their deathbeds, they regret the things that they didn't do, not the things that they did. And so I don't want to be one of those people, in my old age who's looking back and going, man, I wish I had tried that. I wish I had, tried the van life. I wish that I had, tried freelance writing. I just can't stand the thought of being one of those people. And so, I decided to take the plunge and go for it. And I've been really lucky because, Jason, my partner, has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole thing. And, during the times where I didn't have a lot of work, he definitely helped keep me afloat. So it is helpful to have people who support you. But it's totally possible, even if you don't have that kind of support.
I love how you said at least 3 times how terrifying it was, because I think that was my experience, like terrifying. And, but I would choose it 100 more times. I would absolutely, even knowing what I know now, I would absolutely choose it again. And so the experience of it being terrifying, and the experience of, you're going from a full-time job where you've got this steady paycheck to, it's not like you went over to, oh, well, then I did this other full-time job, but I was working, online so I could be remote. There was no real ease. It just went into like sporadic income through writing. But my experience is that even though it's terrifying, and I want to hear your experience on this, but I kept seeing things in my life like conspire in a way where I had exactly what I needed all the time. And so then you get to look at that fear or those terrifying moments and be like, okay, I'm in it right now and I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, and I think you get to evaluate sort of what the things are in your life that are requirements and what you can kind of live without. And that was a big deal for me too. Like having my own apartment and living alone was not 100% necessary. And so it was one of those things that I could cut out. I cut out Netflix. I cut out any bills that I possibly could to decrease my monthly spending. It was really satisfying to be able to kind of jump into something like that and sort of know that no matter what happened, even if things didn't work out, even if, the writing thing, it turned out that I was a horrible writer and nobody wanted me to write for them. Even if that were true, I knew that I would figure it out. I knew that I would be safe. I wasn't going to end up on the streets, without a place to stay, with no clothes on my back. I knew that wasn't a possibility. And so that also helped kind of make me feel a little bit better. Worst come to worst, if things really got bad, it's like my mom would take me in a heartbeat, it's like, so there's always something to fall back on. And I just knew that it was worth the risk no matter what.
So that knowing, I love that, like the knowing. And we too, we were like, the worst thing that could happen is we move back to Massachusetts and we stay with our, our parents, although, last resort to go back, move in when you're in your 40s. But how do you just know? And I know this might be a tough question, but you're explaining like you just knew. And I think a lot of us don't know, like we don't know what we want to do. Maybe we see signs, and maybe it's an awareness thing. Maybe it's an awareness, like you started seeing signs of being outdoors and making that the central focus. But how do you know the pull is strong enough to take that leap? If that makes sense. It might be a general question.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I needed a change because I wasn't happy where I was at, and I had spent a lot of years being unhappy. I was in an abusive relationship for about 8 years. And I got myself out of that and started to just do things for myself and started to find my own happiness. And it got to this point where I knew that in order to be happy, I was going to have to change jobs. I was going to have to figure something out. And the writing thing just felt good. I've always enjoyed writing. I actually wrote a business plan for a climbing gym that I was trying to open while I was working at the vet. I was trying to open this climbing gym in the town that I was in, and that didn't end up working out. But I wrote this 40+ page business plan for this climbing gym, and I kind of was like, I sort of liked that. That was enjoyable. Like, I'm kind of okay at this writing thing. And so, was able to kind of network and meet some people who were freelance writers and got connections, and then just kind of ran with it. As soon as I got an income stream from it, I just was like, okay, this is doable. But I mean, the knowing that I'm going to be okay, that took a little bit of work, because, when you're changing your life that drastically, it's really easy to kind of think about the worst thing that could happen, and the worst thing that could happen, I guess, is that I end up on the street, sleeping in front of, somebody's door on downtown or something like that. But when you really think about it, is that really a possibility? Well, no, I have friends who care about me. I have family who cares about me. I could always go back to the vet, like they'd take me back in a heartbeat. And I knew all of those things. And so it was kind of like, why not? Why not give it a chance? I'm not gonna end up on the street, and I'm always going to have the opportunity to work back at, where I was. So why not go for it?
And because you went after this expansion of what you love in your life, like, it is also led to other professional opportunities, like becoming a guide. So when does that come into your life?
Yeah. The guiding thing was kind of, I feel like it was an accident. I started climbing Mount Shasta, and I was climbing Mount Shasta fairly frequently. Every year I would go up a different route. I just kind of really started to enjoy the mountain. And just for those who aren't familiar with Mount Shasta is a over 14,000 foot peak. It's 14,179 in Northern California, and it's one of the Cascade volcanoes, and it's just this massive mountain. You can see it from I-5, when you're driving through California. This huge mountain that just kind of like pops up out of nowhere. And I totally fell in love with that mountain and started my mountaineering journey there, started climbing other peaks. And then I actually just randomly sent an email to Shasta Mountain Guides. And, they're a guiding business in Mount Shasta City. And was like, hey, this is my experience. I would love the opportunity to be a guide or apprentice as a guide or something like that. And they got back to me and were like, yeah, let's see what you can do, sort of a thing. And so I went to guide training, and this upcoming season will be my 3rd season with Shasta Mountain Guides. And because of that, that was another thing that was really scary for me, was kind of putting myself out there and going, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just going to put myself out there and see. And to my great surprise, they took me on as a guide. And, it's kind of taking those risks, the risks of, being turned down, of maybe not feeling good enough because they said no, that, you have to take those risks too. And those can be really scary because nobody likes to be turned down. Nobody likes to be told, no, we don't want you, or you're not good enough, or you don't have enough experience. That's what I was expecting, was you don't have enough experience. And now, I've established myself with this really wonderful group of people in Mount Shasta. I absolutely love working there, and I love guiding there. And because of that whole experience, my guiding experience there, now I'm guiding backpacking trips, and I actually am starting to guide internationally with other guiding groups. So Awe Expeditions, which is an all-women's expedition company, took me on for as a assistant guide for Aconcagua, which is a almost 23,000 foot mountain down in Argentina. So that's what I was doing pretty much all of January, was down guiding in Argentina, which for me, it's a dream come true. And I just have to pinch myself every time I think about it that, wow, I'm guiding peaks out of the country. And all because I took a chance to be turned down at, this little guiding company in Mount Shasta.
I love everything about it. Like, that's what, and it gets me all fired up because sometimes I want to shake people and be like, you can have this too. Like, you can do this too. You just got to take the first step, and you don't need to know all the answers along the way. It's not like you quit being a vet, in the vet field, in vet medicine, to say, well, I'm going to be a guide at Mount Shasta in 6 years. Like, that wasn't how it works. It's not how it works.
No,
the mind may not have certainty. It may not have certainty.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely never expected to be a guide in this capacity. And, it is something, at one point I did think about like, oh, maybe I should get into backpack guiding, but I never thought that I would ever actually do that. And then now, here I am in guiding backpacking trips and big mountain expeditions and stuff like that. It's like, it is a dream come true, but it's also a dream that I didn't really know that I had, until I started pursuing it, really. It was kind of one of those things that started off as well, maybe this could be fun. And it's developed into something that, I can't imagine not doing it now.
And it's all training. Like, it's all supporting this love of FKTs. Like, it's all training. You're still training your body, like going out and backpacking. And now you're getting paid to do what you love, and you get to share it with people. And there's a great 3-minute video on your Instagram page from that expedition in Argentina. It's so, I can't believe they put all that in 3 minutes. It's really cool. I recommend everybody go check that out. And that was a group of women that you were down there guiding. And so I know you like to put a spotlight on women in the wild. So can you tell us about your podcast?
Yeah. So after I started kind of pursuing more of these outdoor endeavors, I actually had the realization that, being outdoors, especially for me, was extremely empowering. It was it's very healing. And it's something that I want to share with more people, and especially women, because there's a huge gender gap, in women in getting outdoors, and, even in, trail running, there's a huge gender gap. And I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think in ultra marathons, female finishers are at like 30% of the entire, population of ultra runners or something like that. So there's this huge gender gap. And for me, knowing how healing and how powerful and empowering the outdoors can be, I wanted to see more women getting outside, to take care of themselves, to take care of their mental health, to pursue, big audacious goals. And so I started wondering, how can I get more women outside? How can I inspire people more? And my solution was to start a podcast, to share stories, to share training tidbits and nutrition and all of these things that can help people get outside. And honestly, it's not just for women. I do interview all women on the podcast. But I've had plenty of guys reach out to me and kind of going, wow, that was really valuable. Thank you for sharing that story. Or, my wife and I listened to it together and she found that really powerful and I want to thank you. And there's so many reasons that guys can listen to this podcast too. It's not just for women. But, Women of the Wild was made to try and inspire and get more women outside. And because of that, I've been able to not just share some of my stories, but also a lot of other women's stories in the outdoors and how they got started. And it's been a really fun trip to start with that.
So when you think of the interviews that you've done, is there a story that just boom pops in your mind right now? It doesn't have to be the most amazing one, because I'm sure they're all amazing, but is there one that just kind of left a mark on you with some of the conversations you've had?
I've had a lot of good conversations because of that. Some of them are a little bit more difficult to have. I talked to Jillian Brown about PTSD that she got from an abusive relationship. And it really resonated. Her story really resonated with me because of my history and my experience with that. But then because we shared our stories and she shared her experiences with those situations, she also was able to share how the outdoors has changed her life and helped her heal and stuff like that. And I had a lot of people reach out to me afterwards who were touched by her story, who it really resonated with because they've experienced the same thing. It gave them hope. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to listen to that one. And so Jillian Brown, that was a really big one for me. She actually opened my eyes a bit to some things when it comes to PTSD. And but then, just really rad stories like Kelly Halpin and her mountain endeavors. She's such a badass. She's located in Jackson, Wyoming, and she's an artist and an athlete, and she does really amazing solo mountain objectives. So that one was another one that was pretty great. And then I had a whole conversation with Sunny Strower about failure, which was a really, really fun podcast to do.
Oh, yeah. I want to go listen to that one. What's one takeaway that you've had from failure? I know there's probably many because you use these failures to your advantage to grow and to become better and to reach new heights. But what's a takeaway for you that's really settled in from failure?
I've had a lot of experience with failure, I feel like. And a lot of people hear the word failure and they take it in a negative way. Like failure, I did not succeed, I messed up, or, there's all these reasons to look at failure in a really negative way. I see failure as being a formative experience. So you can fail at something, but you can learn from that. And so if you're willing to take whatever failure it is that you had and kind of dissect it, set your feelings aside, dissect it. What actually happened? What went wrong? What can you learn from this? And so I think failure can be one of the best learning experiences out there. And honestly, some of my favorite adventures that I've had have not succeeded in what I actually set out to do, but I still had a wonderful adventure. I still had a great day on the mountain, or something like that. And so, yeah, I don't see failure as a bad thing.
Your mindset, and I heard this just listening to you now, your mindset seems very clear. It seems very clear, and you can sift and sort through the noise. What seems clear, I'm sure you're probably like, no, I mean, there's stuff going on up there all the time. you were talking about mindset in one of these, somebody had asked you a question in one of these podcasts I was listening to, and you talked about mantras, which was a big thing for you, that you kind of beam yourself into the, present moment is really what a mantra does. But you also talked about, which really resonated and opened my eyes, was, when you're struggling or feeling sensation or the intenseness of the moment, maybe in a race, and you're deep within it, asking yourself, is this normal? Like, is this normal? And I've been in endurance sports, I would say, for 20 years, and I haven't quite looked at it like that. Like, when you're at mile, of a 50K, you're at mile, 30, of course, yeah, things are going to feel not good. Like, you're putting yourself in this scenario. Maybe you can speak a little bit more to that, and as to how you sort of trained your brain or sifted, or maybe you had that aha moment that you were able to shift from this sucks to, oh my God, this is exactly what it should feel like in this moment.
Yeah, well, I think some of that comes from experience. I've had plenty of ultra distance efforts kind of go awry where, I just couldn't manage my feelings of discomfort or anything or something like that, and just kind of let myself fall apart. But I do think that, when I go into a big effort, there's going to be some level of pain and discomfort. And for example, during the Tuck Up Trail FKT that I did with my friend Sunny, that's like a 80 something mile trail. It's not really a trail. It's mostly off trail route finding, along the north rim of the Grand Canyon. It's very remote. We got about halfway through and to this point where we could bail if we wanted to. It was an easy bailout option. And we stopped there and kind of discussed, we're both really uncomfortable. We're both pretty dehydrated. We both considered quitting. But once we sat and kind of talked to each other, it was like, why would I quit right now? Because my feet hurt? Well, I'm 40 plus miles into an 80-mile effort. Of course my feet are going to hurt. Because I'm tired? Well, of course, I'm in the middle of a 2-day long effort with very little sleep. Of course I'm going to be tired. Those are normal things to feel at that moment. And so kind of taking a step back and going, well, I expected this. I expected my feet hurt. I expected my muscles to ache. I expected to be tired. That's normal. Okay. Well, then why would I quit? Why would I stop right now when these are all things that are expected? And so I think kind of changing your mindset on what normal is within those moments helps to overcome them. And so, when Sunny and I sat down and had that conversation during the Tuck Up Trail, it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, neither one of us are having a massive mental breakdown for any reason. We're still totally fine. We still have water. We're not going to starve to death. We have plenty of food. It was kind of like, well, why would we quit? Let's keep going. And so having that kind of conversation with yourself, I think, is really helpful. I started having that mindset shift, I think, as I started getting into longer and longer efforts, and especially when I set out on really long unsupported efforts. So, for example, the Lost Coast Trail, which is like a 58-mile trail through the King Range wilderness, and it's really remote. It's kind of on the coast of Northern California, extremely remote, especially the second half of the whole thing. It's really challenging. It's very remote. And I remember getting about three quarters of the way through and sitting down on the side of the trail going, I want to quit. I was on the verge of tears and I'm like, I want to quit so bad. And then I couldn't help but laugh at myself because I'm like, look at where I'm at. I can't do anything about it. What am I going to do? Like, nobody's going to come and carry me out. There's no way for a car to come pick me up. I'm not going to call a helicopter. I can still move just fine, And I couldn't help but laugh at myself because I kind of was like, what am I doing? I'm feeling sorry for myself when I should just keep moving forward. And, so it was those kinds of experiences where I was like, there's literally nothing I can do right now except for just keep going. That helped that mindset shift a little bit. And now every single time I have one of those experiences where like, oh, I want to quit so bad, I laugh at myself because I'm like, well, what am I going to do about it? I'm not going to call a helicopter. My leg's not broken. So
no one's coming for you.
Nobody's coming.
Nobody is coming for you. That's so true. But I think when we look at, so you're just looking at the thoughts you're having, right? And when we look at the thoughts, we get to create a little space that allows us to really, see, are they valid? Are they true? Are they what I need to follow right now in this moment? And many of the times it's just kind of that hard wiring in us, right? We're uncomfortable and we live in these bodies that are hardwired for comfort and energy conservation. And when you're out there doing a huge multi-day effort, like, of course your body's going to be in distress. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful technique. I hope people use that because we can get caught in that, catastrophizing mind. And then it's just a really big energy suck, energy that you need to get out of this, remote wilderness where you are. So, okay, I want to hear if you can share anything that's upcoming for you, because word on the trail is that you got a girl from the East Coast who's like climbing up the ladder behind you. Is she still at it? What's her deal?
Yeah, we're neck and neck. We've had some conversations. She's very, very nice. We might end up doing some FKTs together, but we are neck and neck right now, and it's kind of exciting for me because I do get a little bit of that competition feeling, but I mean, she's really fast and she's really driven. And so we'll see what happens. But, I do have a lot of plans for this year for some shorter FKTs, for some really long FKTs. I don't have anything on the books as of yet because, I'm actually still recovering a bit from the whole Aconcagua COVID situation. And so, I don't have anything set in stone, but I have a lot of plans in my head. I've started a list of FKTs that are really close by so that I, things nearby that I can, kind of focus on and get my training back in line again. But I'm really excited. I've never actually announced that I want to be the first woman to reach 100 FKTs, but I mean, let's be honest, it's definitely something. I mean, that's a goal. Like who wouldn't want to do that? Especially at this point where I think I'm at 53 FKTs, 52 or 53. And, it's like, wow, I've gotten over the halfway mark. Like, why not just keep going? And I still love doing them. So, I'm just going to keep pushing and kind of see what happens at this point.
Oh, it's so exciting. I love it. This has been a great conversation. How can people get more of you? Like, where can they find you? Where can they find the podcast?
Yeah. So, my Instagram is ashley.winchester, and it's Ashley with no E. So ASHLY.Winchester. I'm pretty responsive and active on Instagram. Facebook, you can find me under the same name. I'm not as responsive on Facebook. It kind of just regurgitates my Instagram. But you can find me on there too. And then the podcast, the best way right now is the Instagram, which is womenofthewild.pod. And I'm actually in the process of building a new website. I just rebranded Women of the Wild, and I've got some really cool interviews coming up. So I'm really excited to kind of see where that goes.
Yeah, you wouldn't have time for this if you were working 60 hours a week at your job.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, I love the podcasting, and you guys, I mean, obviously you do too. It's just so fun to meet so many different people, and yeah, be able to impact and inspire your listeners is pretty cool thing.
Yeah, well, I think you did that today for us. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. I'm very grateful for Jody for reaching out to us and bringing you into our awareness, and for Linda for, getting this podcast put together for us, and tell Jason that we will be coming for him and get him on the show, because I'd love to talk to him as well.
Rumor has it he was a triathlete at one point.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he's actually getting back into being a triathlete. So, yeah, you guys, you should definitely go after him. Cool. And thank you, Jody, for hooking us up like this. This is great.